Hey guys, welcome back to another new video. Today we're doing part 2 of my mini arcade machine project. This thing's been a complete and total pain, but it's turning out pretty awesome so far. As you can see, I decided not to do any more building on camera, just because I feel like it's a little bit redundant after the first one. And basically, I replaced out a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just going to go over it. I'm going to tell you guys how I did it. And then we're going to move on and install all the electronics, and that I'm going to show you how to do. The first thing you guys might notice that I changed is the matte black vinyl on the sides right here. I basically had to take everything apart, stick the matte black vinyl down, put everything back together. It was a little bit of a pain. It took some time, but I think it looks pretty nice. I'm actually eventually going to wrap this entire thing with matte black, and then I'm going to put some prints on like this part, and maybe around the screen. Because I decided I really don't want to take this thing apart, sand it down, paint it, everything like that. I'm just basically tired of taking this thing apart. I've taken it apart way many more times than I should have. Another thing you guys might notice have changed is there's a screen in here now. I'll tell you guys how I put the screen in and everything like that. I didn't record me putting in the screen because it took a while and I went through a lot of different methods. I'll tell you guys how I put it in a little bit. Another change has been this control board. I moved all the buttons up. I moved the start and select button to the front. And you can see I even added in speakers right here, which is what I've been doing most of the day, trying to get these things wired up, trying to shape these little speaker grills that go in these holes. But with the actual buttons and joystick, you can see that I've went through a few different templates, a few different versions of it, and yeah, this one turned out the best so far. I'm really liking it. I like that I moved it up. I like that I moved these buttons on the front. The only problem is if a small kid is playing or something like that, they have a tendency to bump into these buttons and pause the game and not realize it. So that's one thing to kind of look out for. Another thing I changed was this top sign. You can see before it used to be really thick, and it also didn't have anything recessed in right here. I don't know if the camera's picking that up from that far away. So what I did is basically hogged out a little bit of it. I cut the inside in a little bit more. I added a sign in the top. It does light up. We're going to put LEDs in the top of that. But as far as the electronics you're going to need, I have a Dell monitor right here. I'll put the exact one down in the description. Cost me like 30 bucks, but there is a little defect in it, so I'm waiting to actually replace out this monitor. More than likely with the same model because it fits with everything that I've done to it, but just try to get one that doesn't have a blemish in it. You're going to need computer speakers. You can see I took these ones apart. This is the Logitech Z130. Now, the main thing I was looking for when I was looking for speakers is something that was USB powered and something that had these grills on it, so that way I could stick the grills in the holes that I cut. And these ones match perfectly for everything except they weren't USB powered, so I have to have another power cord in there. Didn't really want it, but it doesn't really affect too much. The other parts you're going to need is a Raspberry Pi. I use a Raspberry Pi 3 because it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built into it. I'll show you what you can do with that later. I have an HDMI to VGA adapter. You might not need this depending on what monitor you have. This monitor only has VGA. I actually bought an active one that's powered by USB, but I don't really think you need an active one. The guy that originally did this didn't use an active one and it seemed to work just fine. The active one was just pretty cheap and it came in pretty quick, so I just went with that. Another thing you're going to need is LEDs, and I got some old LEDs from work. Basically, they were just some scrap left over from a job. You can see that the double-sided tape on the bag is a little bit yellow, but they should be pretty sticky enough. They do work. I have them hooked up to an old pedal power supply. Another thing you're going to need is the controls for the actual buttons themselves. Now, the controls I use is a USB just because I didn't feel like screwing with something that I had to like work out the pins for and everything else like that. So, USB is pretty awesome. It'll let you configure all the controls in RetroPie. I'll show you guys how to do that in a couple of minutes. And yeah, I think that's it. So, let's go ahead and work on putting RetroPie on our Raspberry Pi 3. Alright, so now that we're over on the computer, you want to just go ahead and click Get RetroPie. Raspberry Pi 2 or 3, we have the Raspberry Pi 3, and that'll start to download. I already have it downloaded, so we're just going to go ahead and cancel that. We're going to go into the folder where our RetroPie is. We're going to right-click on this. If you don't have 7-zip, download 7-zip. Just Google it. Right-click, go to 7-zip, extract to image file. Alright, once that's done, you need to open up Win32 Disk Imager, and where you can get that from is sourceforge.net. All the links for all this will be down in the description, so that way you don't have to type all this in. But you're just going to go ahead and click the download button. Again, I don't have to download it. I already have it. Going to minimize that. Going to minimize this. Alright, now you want to go in here. Make sure that your device is selected. This is the right one for me. You want to go ahead and go to your image file. Find where your image is saved. Click on it. There's my image right there. And then you just click right. Yes. Now, if you receive an access denied problem, what it could be is the adapter that came with your SD card. Basically, take your micro SD, stick it in your adapter, turn on the lock button, stick it into your card reader, pull it out, turn off the lock button, stick it back into your card reader, and it should read it. I don't know why this is an issue with some people. I also had this issue, so it seemed to work just fine. I'm using a 32 gigabyte SanDisk. And if you didn't know, that's a micro SD. That's what the Raspberry Pi uses. And I'll just skip to the end of this because all this has to do is write directly to it. All right, and then once it's done, it'll say write successful. So we're going to go back over to the machine and finish all that. All right, now you can see I already have a bunch of wires in there, but what we're going to do first is actually put in the LEDs just because it's the easiest. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove the tape from the back of these. Make sure that this is still sticky because it doesn't look like it is, but it feels like it is. So we're just going to go ahead and remove the backing paper. They should hold fairly decently. And I'm just going to go ahead and stick these on the inside of here, just like this. And they should hold fairly well for what we're doing. And I'm actually going to take this cord and run it down the side here. Just so that way it makes everything a little bit neater. Because you can tell I've got plenty of extra cord for that. And while I have this opened up, I want to go over one thing really quickly. Basically, to mount this monitor, what I did was use some double-sided sticky tape on the front of the monitor. Stuck it in place where I needed it because I had to look at it from the front to make sure it was centered. Then I took the VESA mount plate off of the back of here that comes on the original stand. Basically, took everything off the stand. Took the VESA mount plate, mounted it to a board, took it, sat it in the spot that I needed it to, and then put my screws in the side right here, and it holds it pretty tight to there. I don't think that thing's going anywhere. I might actually have a problem taking that off if I do replace the screen. Alright, now you can see that I pre-installed the VGA cable and the power cord for the monitor. Also pre-installed the leads on all the buttons. Basically, they're just two prongs that go on the buttons. The button is just a momentary switch that when you click it down, it engages. When it lets go, it doesn't. So there's not really a way that you can possibly screw that up. You just stick it to the two sides. Then what you want to do is you want to take your board that came with all the controls, plug this in right here. This is the USB cable for it. And then you want to go through and just start plugging in all of these cords. Now, it doesn't really matter where the cords go as long as you don't put them on these slots up here, because this is a built-in turbo button, a mode button, and things like that. So you don't want to use those pins right there. What you want to use is these pins down the side and these pins down the side. What I like to do is use these ones over here for the stick and these ones over here for the button. So I'm just going to go ahead and start plugging those in. Now, it doesn't matter where you plug these in, because when you start up RetroPie, it's going to ask you to configure all of your controls, and it'll let you choose everything when you click it. So it's not too big of a deal where you plug these in at. And it's going to take me a second, so I'm just going to skip to all these being plugged in. Now, this is something you don't have to do, but this is something I do because I've had experiences where a piece of metal was in something or something like that. It just fried things. So basically what I like to do with any exposed electronics is go ahead and put some electrical tape on the bottom right where the solder joints are. Now, you want to be careful not to bend any solder joints or pull any solder joints off. You just want to go ahead and stick a piece of tape lightly over top of it and just kind of press it down. Again, you don't have to do this. I do this because I've had little pieces of metal in some of my projects that just seem to short things out. So that works out great for that. And one thing I do want to point out too, that the speakers I put in here are a little bit small, so I actually had to double stick tape those on. And it seems to hold pretty good. I'm using 3M VHB tape, and actually that's what I'm going to use right on the bottom of here to mount this. Just because it's nice and easy, you don't have to screw into anything. Just take some tape off the roll, cut it with a pair of scissors. You can go ahead and stick it right to the bottom, especially since you already put that tape on there. It's protecting it. Alright, so just go ahead and take your backing paper off of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this as far in as I can and then stick it down so it leaves room for the other components to go in. Now, you realistically don't have to mount this. This thing should be fine just wiggling around in there. But I like to mount everything because you never know when it's going to pull up and it's going to pull one of your wires or electronics out of there. So it's always good to secure everything. I don't want to use screws just because it's a little bit more complicated to get screws in there because it's a really, really tight space. So double-sided sticky tape works just fine. This thing is not going anywhere. Alright, now you want to get your Raspberry Pi 3, take your memory card, stick it right in the bottom right there. And again, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take some electrical tape, cover the bottom of this. Like I said, I just don't want anything frying on this board. Alright, everything's taped up. You can see I left the SD card slot open in case I ever want to upgrade this SD card later. This is only a 32 gigabyte, which will hold a lot of old games, but if you're playing like PlayStation 1 games and stuff like that, it's not going to hold that many. You can always use USB thumb drives to put them in more storage. But I just didn't want to lock that down to that individual card, especially if that card goes up or something like that. You never know what could happen. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and attach the HDMI. I have a speaker cable in here running from my front speakers that I'm going to go ahead and attach. Now with this VGA adapter, it also has audio. You can choose in the Raspberry Pi to use audio directly from the board itself or via HDMI. I like using it from the board itself. It just seems a little bit more cleaner. It's not going through an adapter and then coming through. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to find your power cord for your Raspberry Pi. It's a little micro USB. Go ahead and plug that in. We're going to stick some double-sided sticky tape and stick this in there. Now this isn't going to sit exactly flush because of the micro USB slot. It also has some solder joints lifting up there. But all it needs is a little bit of contact. Like I said, the electronics really aren't going to move around in here. But I like to secure everything so that way you're not having any issues with anything coming unplugged. Another thing that I want to mention is if this is your first time working with a Raspberry Pi 3, the base model does not come with a power charger and it does not come with an SD card. So make sure you buy those separate or make sure you buy that as a kit. Just going to take that backing paper off of there. Now this, I want to be able to get to the USB ports and these ports over here. The pins I'm not too worried about. We're not using those pins in this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this right over here. Just give it a little bit of pressure. You don't want to push down any of those solder joints or screw anything up on the bottom of the board. And that's pretty secure right there, as you can see. Alright, now we need our VGA cable. I honestly wish I would have got a shorter VGA cable for this because this one's pretty long. I'm going to have to zip tie it or something. But for now, we're just going to get this working and then we'll deal with cleaning it up later. I'm going to go ahead and attach it in there. I'm going to tighten that down so it doesn't come undone. I'm also going to take the power cable for this because it is active. It needs a power cable. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that USB in right there. There we go. You also want to find your cord for your USB control off of your controller and plug that in. And one other thing you're going to need for additional setup is a USB keyboard. Now you can use a little mini USB keyboard with a touchpad, everything like that. It'll work just fine on this. I don't have one on hand, but when I tighten this thing up, I am going to put a little mini USB adapter on there so that way I can just use a keyboard whenever I need to access the command console on here. Because there are some things you want to use the command console for. But other than that, everything is connected. You just want to go ahead and power everything, and I'll show you what that looks like in 1 second. Alright, now everything is plugged in except for the Raspberry Pi. I'm going to show you what happens when that gets plugged in 1 second. But what I want to show you is this actually does light up. You just can't see it with the lights on. The LEDs are working. Everything's working with that. Just wanted to show you guys that. Everything is plugged into a power strip for right now. I am going to end up putting a power strip in the back of this. But when you plug in the Raspberry Pi, the thing I like about this screen here Alright, when that started up, it told it it's going to resize because it detects the bounding area of the screen, and you'll see the Raspberry Pi starts running automatically. But one thing I wanted to show you guys is you can see that this screen doesn't have any buttons on it. I took the bezel off the front of this. This screen will actually start up whenever it detects an input. So as long as it's plugged in, it detects an input, it starts right up. You don't really have to worry about the power buttons and stuff like that. One thing I would recommend is setting your brightness and everything for the screen before you do that, because this is the button panel right here that I completely took off, so there's no way for me to adjust the brightness on the screen anymore. But I have it where I like it, and as you can see, the Raspberry Pi will go ahead and go through the setup for you. Let me go ahead and zoom in on this. Alright, now I'm trying to get this as focused as I can. Actually, I need to zoom out a tiny bit so you guys can see what I'm doing right here. Alright, now this will automatically detect your gamepad. What you want to do is just hold a button. That'll pop up, and then what you want to do is configure everything. So for the D-pad up, down, left, right, start, select, A, B, want my X, Y, and up there, left shoulder, left trigger, right trigger. Now you will see that you have controls for like R3, L3, and stuff like that. What you can do right there is just hold in a button and keep holding in a button for any controls you don't want on here. So obviously I only have so many buttons, so I can't use all those controls because you can only use one button per control. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip through everything. Click OK. And now we're in our RetroPie interface. Alright, now when your first initial setup, what you want to do, just click A and go into the configuration here. We're going to go down to Wi-Fi and hook the Wi-Fi up for this thing. And this is where you're going to need a keyboard. Connect the Wi-Fi, just go ahead and hit enter. Here's my different Wi-Fis. I'm going to go ahead and connect to mine. Give me 1 second here. Alright, and I'll go through the process and connect. Alright, now you can see it's connected. It'll give me the internal IP. Now this is your internal IP. This isn't your IP that goes out to the internet. It's your IP that you use inside of your house. But what you want to do is you want to go ahead and write down this number right here. And every once in a while, if you're trying to do the Wi-Fi, it'll tell you it cannot connect. Just go ahead and try it again. Hit escape on your keyboard to get out of that. Now, what you can do right off the bat is, say if you want a different theme or something, you can go into Emulator Station Theme. Again, you got to use the keyboard anytime you mess with the operating system. So I want to go down, and there's a theme that I really like called Trunky Fran. I'm just going to go ahead and let that install. Once it's done, it'll take you back to this menu. I'm going to go ahead and cancel. Then I'm going to go into my menu, which you get to by Start button. You can also access your sound system here. If you have speakers mounted on the front, kind of like I do here, this is where you want to control your volume for everything. Since I don't have a volume knob, the volume knob is actually inside of here. I could have put it on the outside, but it was just a lot more effort. You can control it all right here. I'm just going to go ahead and go back. UI settings. You can have your screensaver behavior, screensaver. You can show your frame rate of your games if you really want to. Transition, you can slide or fade between the games. And then your theme set right here. You can see I only have 2 themes. Just going to go ahead and hit back. And that one applied automatically. Sometimes, every once in a while, it won't. So what you're going to have to do is go down to quit and just hit restart emulation station. So that's how you do your themes. Just going to go ahead and go back out of here. If you ever need to reconfigure your inputs because you did something wrong, just go there and click that and it'll run you through the original setup. Make sure you enter your buttons in slowly because I just had to re-enter in mine because my B button wasn't working. And you can see it changes the screen on there. But what we're going to do is we're going to hop back over to the computer and I'm going to show you guys how to put games on here wirelessly. Alright, now you can see here I have Mario downloaded, and what you want to do is hit backspace and type in RetroPie, all capital, right there. Click on that. And if it doesn't connect immediately and it asks you for a username and password, root is the username, raspberry is the password, and then it should take you right over to the screen. And as you can see, I got my ROMs right here. Here are all the systems that this supports. I'm going to go to NES since that's what the Mario game is on. Just go ahead and paste it in there. Alright, now we're going to shoot back over to the game system. Alright, now as you can see, nothing has really changed over here. What you need to do is go to your menu by hitting Start. Go down to Quit. Hit Restart Emulation Station. Yes. Let this restart. And you'll see that it detected there's a Nintendo game. Start up the Nintendo right there. Go ahead and click on that. You'll see Super Mario Bros. Launching. It'll tell you press A button to configure. Go ahead and hit start for Mario. And you can see everything is working. The only thing that's not working is my sound, and I think I know why. I have to set that for the Raspberry Pi, not the HDMI output, so I'll show you guys how to do that in 1 second. It's actually a good thing because Mario is copyrighted Nintendo sounds, and they will flag my video. But anyways, to get out of a game, you just click in, start and select at the same time. Alright, we're going to go ahead and exit out of the game. We're going to go over to RetroPie. This is your configuration for everything. I'm going to go ahead and click Audio. Anytime you do something in here is when you need your keyboard. So what this has it set to is Auto. And I don't want that. I want that on the headphone jack of the Raspberry Pi. So I'm just going to go to number 2. Click OK. And you'll hear the speakers just popped. That means they're running. Go ahead and go back. I'm going to start up Mario again for just a second so you guys can hear that the speakers work. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and click Start. And you should hear the sound start up. Now, in Mario, the sound's a little low, so what I'm going to do is go back out to the menu, go to sound settings, and I want to just increase this to 100. Start the game back up. That is one downfall, that you have to get out of the game in order to mess with the sound, but it's not that big of a deal. It's a lot easier than drilling a hole for the volume. And you can see it's a lot louder. Just going to go ahead and pause that and get out of that game. But yeah, there's your Raspberry Pi. It's running on there. Everything is working perfectly fine. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, as you can see, everything is working. This thing is awesome. I've actually played games on this already. I erased everything off of it so that way I could show you guys how to hook everything up. I wanted to make sure I knew everything and knew how everything worked before I told you guys information on it. But one thing I do want to mention is you don't have to build an arcade cabinet in order to enjoy this experience. You could realistically build an arcade stick like I did a long time ago. If you guys have ever seen that video, it's really old on my channel. It's got a good bit of views. If you guys want to go check that out, figure out how to build an arcade stick. That arcade stick was more than big enough to put all the electronics inside, and then all you would have to do is run out an HDMI cord, and you can just plug it into your TV and have a little portable arcade stick that just has all your games and everything on it. It'll work exactly like this one does. This one just has built-in screen, speakers, and just looks a little bit cooler. Now, as to where to get these games, you're going to have to look online. Just Google how to install ROMs. Just Google whatever ROM you're looking for, or PlayStation uses images. Look up PlayStation images. You can normally find the ISO for it. I'm not going to tell you in this video because it's not illegal. It's a little bit of a gray area. Basically, if you've owned the game, it's okay. If you haven't owned the game, it's kind of illegal to download a game you've never owned, so I'm not really going to tell you guys how to get them in this video. But as you can see, everything works fine. When you do get them, just install them wirelessly. You don't have to have a flash drive or anything like that connected to the machine. And it's pretty awesome. Now, some updates that I want to discuss real quick before I let you guys go that I want to do to this machine is I actually want to take matte black, wrap this entire thing with it. I'm going to end up replacing out these buttons, even though I just put them in for some white LED buttons just because I think it'll look a little bit cooler. And if you guys see my last video, you would know that there's screws all down the side of this. You can see all the screws. What I was going to do is put some wood filler, fill them all in, sand everything down, and then stick some vinyl over the side. What I've decided that I'm going to do now is actually take a metal plate that's routed out exactly in this shape, because I did route this out. I can route that out on the CNC machine. Just going to double stick tape it to the side, stick my graphic on that, and call it a day. It'll cover up all these screws and it'll look great. I also plan on putting all the electronics inside of this internally and screwing this thing together. But like I said, I want to get a little mini keyboard first. And basically what I'm going to have on the back is this little switch with the power plug. You just plug the power cord right into the back of here. There's no cords coming out of the machine. You're not worried about tripping over anything. If you do, it'll come unplugged. I just really like the idea of that. So that's an upgrade that I'm going to do in the future. But as far as now, everything works. It looks awesome, and I'm going to go ahead and start installing games so that way I can go and play. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is if you're playing PlayStation 1 games on this, which PlayStation 1 games do work, I was playing Tekken 3 on it earlier, what you can do is take a PlayStation 3 controller and pair it to the Raspberry Pi with Bluetooth. I might show you guys how to do that in another video. I kind of got to work it out still. I was playing Tekken on the controls on here. It was working just fine. Just for different games that use the analog stick and things like that, it'd be nice to have an actual controller. I'm also thinking about adding a headphone jack right here and a USB port, but that's future things. I'll deal with that in another video. Sorry for talking too long. Just wanted to give you guys all the information that I know about this thing so far. Like this video if you guys liked it. Subscribe for more random stuff like this, and I will see you guys next time.